Good morning. My name is Wayne Kleinschmidt. I'm a veteran service officer in Trenton, Missouri. I just want to address a few things. I deal with a lot of veterans who don't want to enroll in the VA because they feel they're taking benefits from other people who deserve them more than they do. I just want to reassure everybody that's not the case. The VA actually gets funding by head count, by the amount of veterans who actually are serviced by the VA. By you enrolling, you're actually putting more money into the system to help other veterans. So you're actually doing the opposite when you don't enroll in the VA. Second thing I wanted to address, it's never too late to file for a disability or compensation for an injury incurred in the military. A lot of veterans, when you're in the military, you get out, you're a younger individual or even retired, you want to get on with the rest of your life, and you get busy and forget to file for your compensation or disabilities. I would encourage you, especially the individuals first getting out of the military, please get a copy of all your medical records, keep them, register your DD 214 at the courthouse, and file for those disabilities and compensation sooner than later. The earlier you get your injuries or different things documented, they may not be an issue now, and the VA may only give you a 0%. They'll acknowledge that perhaps you were injured in the service, but they only give you a 0% because maybe your hearing, for example, isn't damaged enough, or you may have diabetes, but it's not disabling enough where at the present time it warrants a monetary compensation every month. But keep in mind, you and I are getting older. You may be in your 20s or 30s or even 40s now, but as you get older, those injuries will only get worse. Diabetes gets worse. You end up with neuropathy in your legs and hands, and it affects your vision. You can affect your heart. So all of the Vietnam vets, I'm sure, could attest to what I'm saying. I'm sure if they could go back and redo things, a lot of them would have filed for disability sooner. A lot of your Gulf War vets were exposed to burning oil wells, burning vehicles. That oil gets in your lungs and it never leaves. It causes a lot of respiratory issues, can cause lung cancer. That's an extreme case, and unfortunately, with the way the VA is structured, it's hard to prove sometimes. But that's where it goes back to. You need to, as soon as you get out of the service, you need to get this stuff documented. Because, make a long story short, I just had a veteran not that long ago ended up 100% disabled because of being in the first Gulf War. He was right next to an oil well when it exploded, and he ended up with severe lung damage. He's now to the point where he had to have a trach and is on a ventilator just so he can breathe. That's an extreme case, but that's an example of what can happen in the extreme cases. Also, a lot of your veterans nowadays with burn pits, they damage your lungs. A lot of IEDs that are blowing up. TBI, for example, from IEDs, that shock wave that hits you, I'm sure you've heard a lot on the news about how the NFL is looking at concussions and stuff. Well, the same thing happens to you when an IED blows up. That concussion hits you like a concrete wall, and your brain sloshes around in the liquid in your head and hits the side of your skull, and it causes a concussion. It can cause some pretty serious brain damage. You may not see the results of it right then, but a lot of people with TBI suffer from severe migraines, totally debilitating migraines to the point where some of them can't even work. They also end up with seizures. You can end up with vision problems, hearing issues. I mean, the list goes on. I'm not a neurosurgeon, so I'm not going to tell you all of that. But if you have had TBI, I would strongly encourage you to file on it. Strongly encourage you to see a neurologist or a neurosurgeon. VA's got some pretty good doctors. I mean, some VAs, as you will, I'm sure, know if you're in the system, some VAs are better than others. I also recommend veterans to, if you have insurance, keep the insurance. Do not get rid of it. There's a lot of veterans that I've talked to, when they enroll in the VA, they get rid of their insurance, and that's the worst thing you can do. There's a lot of, I always encourage you, if you can afford it, keep it, for the simple reason, if you get sick, if you fall, break an arm, break a hip, whatever, and you don't live right next to the VA, it's a lot easier to go to your local doctor and get cared for. Now, with that being said, you might have co-pays depending on what kind of insurance you have. Now, the VA, if you're service connected and you have an emergency and you go to to a civilian hospital, if you're service connected, I'll make sure I'll emphasize that, or any other vet, if you go to the VA or to a civilian hospital for an emergency, the VA says you have 72 hours to notify them. And what that means is the attending physician at the hospital where you're seen for, like, say, a heart attack or something, needs to call the attending physician of the ER at the hospital or VA hospital where you are assigned. Also, you or a family member like your wife or somebody like that needs to notify the VA where you doctor as well. And I recommend highly letting your general physician at the VA also know the date and time and where you are and what emergency room, so that they can get those records, and it helps with your care. But also, the earlier you document it, I recommend within the first 24 hours, it gets the ball rolling. If they are going to pay for it or pay a percentage of it, it's a lot easier for them if they know, right there. I mean, if the attending physician calls right as soon as you hit the emergency room or shortly thereafter, your wife or yourself, if you can, or your child or whatever, calls and follows up with the VA, and get those comments in the system. That way, if the VA, you do qualify to get reimbursed, or the VA, you've qualified to have the VA pay the bill, it's paid. Because if you wait more than 72 hours, the VA does not have to pay the bill. I have a lot of veterans right now that are stuck paying hospital bills in the hundreds of thousands of dollars because they didn't follow the process the way they were supposed to. Also, that goes back to having insurance. If you have insurance, even if the VA is going to pay for it, the insurance at least will give you that buffer zone in the time frame. It'll pay, whatever they're going to pay, and the remainder then is picked up by the VA. Now, with that being said, if you have Medicare A and B, for example, a lot of times what ends up happening, because Medicare and the VA are both federal agencies, usually what ends up happening is the VA won't pay if Medicare pays, because they both would pay the same percentage. The VA actually goes off of what Medicare's guidelines are, which kind of, my personal opinion is, if you served in the military, you have an honorable discharge, there shouldn't be you should just get care, period. You served your country, you earned it. However, certain politicians and stuff that make the rules at a lot higher pay grade than me disagree with that, and that part of it, I think, that is they're trying to cut costs, which I can understand. Also, to address the Veterans Choice Card. I have a lot of veterans in this area that use the Veterans Choice Card, and there's a misconception that you can make an appointment with the doctor directly. That is false. Make sure on the back of the Veterans Choice Card there is an 800 number. Make sure you call that number and they will make the appointment for you. You can advise the person when you call which doctor you would like to see, and if they're in network, and if they take the Veterans Choice Card. Not all doctors have to. They're not required by law to take it. If they're in network and the VA will make an appointment, they will call you and say your appointment's on, say, Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. When they call you, they will have an authorization number or an RA number. Make sure you get that number from the Veterans Choice rep that calls you back. Because that number, when they call you back and give you that authorization number, they will tell you, okay, you're authorized 1 visit, 2 visits, 3 visits. And that way, you know, going to the doctor, even before you walk in the office, you're only authorized to see that doctor once, twice, or 3 times. That way, when you go in, if the doctor wants to see you again, if you're only authorized 1 visit, you can tell the doctor, well, I need to go back and get pre-authorization to see you again. Also, make sure you have that authorization number with you to give to the nurse or secretary when you check in, but also keep that number with you in your record someplace. So if that bill isn't paid, you can call TRICARE or call the Veterans Choice number on the back of the card, which is administered by TRICARE, and give them that authorization number, and then they can figure out why it's not being paid or what needs to happen to get it paid. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, and I will let you like to say this. Thank you, all of you veterans. I'm a veteran myself, but I'd like to thank all veterans for their service, and thank you for all the families who support the veterans. Also, veterans who served in combat, the VA's got a program called the Vet Center. I highly recommend them. They're administered by the VA, but they're totally separate entity. The nice thing about the Vet Center versus like a psychiatrist at the VA, the Vet Center is 100% confidential. Unless you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else, whatever you say to them in that setting is kept confidential. It's never discussed with anybody else. And a lot of these guys are highly, highly educated and highly good at what they do. And nice thing about the Vet Center, they're all vets. A lot of them are combat vets. So when you go there, you don't have to sit there and explain. When you say fob, for example, you don't have to sit there and explain to some rookie psychiatrist what a fob is. They already know, which I have to admit, when I first went to the first VA psychiatrist, by the time I talked to him for 3 minutes, I was so frustrated with him because it was a 20-year-old kid right out of high school or right out of college or whatever, and had no clue what I was even talking about. Had never been there, didn't have any of the verbiage down. But anyway, with that being said, Vet Center, highly recommend them. Here locally, they come once a month to the VFW hall, and it's a very good service. It's totally 100% free. It's confidential. Also, combat vets, I would strongly advise you to get involved with your local VFW post. That is another resource you have available to you, especially like, say, in the state of Missouri. VFW does over 90% of all the claims in the state. DAV is right behind them. And both those organizations are very good. Not saying the American Legion isn't, because the American Legion, for example, in Minnesota, does more claims than VFW or DAV. Each state kind of has their strong organizations. In the state of Missouri, just happens to be VFW. I strongly advise you to get involved with a veterans organization. They have attorneys. They have people who will represent you totally free of charge to the VA And so, like when you file for compensation, for example, they will represent you so that you're not trying to represent yourself. And any attorney, if you've ever had to deal with legal matters, any attorney will tell you if you're represented by an attorney or a representative, you have a better chance of winning. They've been through the system long enough. They know how to say stuff. They know how to file the paperwork. You have a better chance of winning. So it's the same thing with the VFW or any other veterans organization. They're highly trained service officers. They know what to do. They know how to say it. They know how to do the paperwork. And that way you don't have to worry about it. And they'll also give you a lot of advice if perhaps there's some you need to get more documentation or whatever. They'll tell you, okay, well, I recommend you go see an audiologist, a civilian audiologist, get their opinion on your hearing and have them write it up. That strengthens your case when you go before a medical review board at the VA. But anyway, if you have any questions, I would feel free to contact my office. My office's number is 660-359-2078. That's 660-359-2078. But also the VFW National in Kansas City, they are very good. They have service officers down there. They're very good and very knowledgeable. They service the whole country. So if you can actually Google their phone numbers. If you go to, I believe it's vfw.org, you can pull up their phone numbers. And also they can also on that website, you can find the district or DVSO or district service officer for your area. These are certified, highly trained individuals who can take your claim and run with it. They are very good at what they do. I highly recommend them. If there's not VFW, like I said earlier, DAV is another organization. Most people don't realize that they have certified as well as American Legion. DAV and VFW, I guess I will tell you, in most of the country are the best at what they do. American Legion, though, like I said, Minnesota, they're number one. So each state's got, you kind of have to look at what you have. In the state of Minnesota, for example, there's also county service officers. Every county has a service officer or a group of service officers who work for the state and county, and they are very good at what they do. So some useful information for you. Okay, I'm back. Like I said earlier, I just wanted to let you know, thank you for your service. Thank you for your time listening to this video. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to give me a call, 660-359-2078. I may not service your state. I'm personally in Missouri. However, I'm familiar with the state of Minnesota as well. Any service officer in any state can, we won't necessarily file the paperwork for you, but we can connect you with a service officer in the state and county where you're located. And that individual can give you a lot better service because they're right there. They can talk to you face to face and build a rapport with you and do your paperwork for you. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. Call the VFW National. There you can go to vfw.org and get their phone numbers. DAV National also has service officers. Highly recommend them. They're very knowledgeable at what they do. Thanks and have a great day.